Do you believe in UFOs and extraterrestrials? If so, you're hardly alone. Belief in space visitors is common throughout the world, particularly so in the US and especially so within the New Age movement. But what if I told you that belief in UFOs and ETs is intimately connected to white supremacy, and pretty much always has been? To be clear, fascination and horror with strange lights in the sky and even space visitors has been part of human experience since the beginning. But belief in flying saucers and humanoid creatures really didn't become a thing until the middle of the 20th century. Now, I've already mentioned in a previous video that certain thinkers in post-war Germany believed that Mr. Mustache had survived the war and went to live in the Arctic under the ice caps and build spaceships with the original Aryans. Now, around that time, we began to see the first reports of actual contact with space visitors, coming mostly from the United States, which at the time was involved in a space race with the Russians. The first claim of contact with ETs was made by a guy named George Adamski, who was a theosophist from California, who claimed that he had contact with a Venusian named Orthon, and he wrote about this in a 1953 book entitled Flying Saucers Have Landed. Significantly, Adamski described Orthon as a fair-haired individual of Nordic appearance. And in a 1955 sequel entitled Inside the Spaceships, he claimed to have met another fair-haired individual called the Master. Now, one of the witnesses to Adamski's supposed contact with Orthon in the California desert was a guy named George Hunt Williamson, who likewise became obsessed with contacting the light-skinned Space Brothers, which he originally did through a Ouija board and then using Morse code. Williamson then began publishing his own books, many of which had to do with reinterpreting Bible stories and human history as a conflict between various extraterrestrial races and their human allies. The central conflict revolved around the blonde and benevolent aliens from the Pleiades who were at war with the evil aliens from the constellation Orion. According to Williamson, these evil aliens were aided by Earthlings, who he described as small in stature with thin faces and weak bodies, talkative and exceedingly intelligent, but materialistic and stubborn. In a book called UFOs Confidential, Williamson wrote that all governments are under complete control of the international bankers. Even more explicit in his anti-Semitism is this guy, William Dudley Pelley, a theosophist, spiritualist, and ardent supporter of Hitler who founded a fascist paramilitary organization called the Silver Shirts in the early 1930s. After being jailed for sedition in World War II, Pelley devoted himself to mystical writing and penned a book called Star Guests, a supposedly channeled history of the Earth in which aliens from Sirius, the biblical sons of God, interbreed with humans, the daughters of men, thereby creating various subspecies of apelings who live alongside a lying and meddling race of outsiders called the Alien Menace. But wait, there's more. Stay tuned for part 2.